My friends, good day. At a time when there was no public internet yet, the video of this flight still managed to go viral. It's November 23, 1996 at 11 a.m. at Addis Ababa Airport. From there, a Boeing 767-200 extended range is about to take off, which is considered the flagship of the national airline Ethiopian Airlines. It was supposed to operate Flight 961. In fact, this flight was the first step in a long African journey that would take it through many stopovers, all the way to Côte d'Ivoire on the west coast of Africa. At takeoff, 175 people are on board, including 2 pilots in the cockpit. On the left is a respected experienced captain, 42 with 12,000 flight hours. To his right, a 34-year-old co-pilot with 3,000 flight hours, also highly respected in the company and quite experienced. On this aircraft, the plane is climbing. The assigned altitude that day was 390 by air traffic control 20 minutes after takeoff. Suddenly, there's some kind of commotion in the cabin. Then suddenly the cockpit door opens. Back then, the doors were no sturdier than a closet door. It's pushed open, 3 men rush into the cockpit and immediately start hitting the co-pilot. He tries to push them back, unfastens his seatbelt, tries to fight them off, but in the end, he's the one who gets thrown out. The captain finds himself facing these 3 young men who have an absolutely shocking demand. That is to say, at the time, airplane hijackings were very common. Not a week went by without hearing on the news that there had been a hijacking somewhere in the world. And more often it was resolved through negotiation. Sometimes, in the most serious cases, it ended in an escalation of violence, but that's not the norm. Ethiopian Airlines alone had been hijacked 10 times during the first half of the 90s. This very captain himself had been hijacked twice. Most of the time, it was people, sometimes with political, religious, or other motivations, who demanded to be taken to Switzerland or Finland or Sweden to request asylum. And most of the time, the situation was resolved without bloodshed. Except that day, he was dealing with some very unusual pirates. Under the threat of a bomb, first he said there were 11 of them, but under the threat of a bomb, I said, they demanded to go to Australia. So you need to know one thing. The first step that this flight was going to take was to connect Addis Ababa Airport to Jomo Kenyatta Airport in Nairobi. The distance is 1,500 kilometers. Even if you include the reserves, it's not enough to cross the Indian Ocean. The first airport, the closest Australian airport, was over 9,000 kilometers away, 6 times farther than planned for this flight. That's what the captain tried to explain to those hijackers who absolutely wanted to go to Australia. One of them opened a promotional brochure showing Ethiopian Airlines extremely proud of its aircraft, the 767-200 extended range, and showing its range from Addis Ababa Airport. So there's a big circle that includes a lot of countries, including Australia. They say it can't go to Australia, but he clarifies it can when you're planning to go there. We only have enough fuel to reach Nairobi, so we can't go farther. They tried to negotiate with them the possibility of making a stop somewhere. He tells them, listen, there's no problem. We're used to dealing with pirates, but you have to understand that we need to land somewhere. Refuel, potentially maybe let some passengers go. That way we'll be lighter and get to Australia faster. Then we leave, but we won't reach our destination this way. These pirates are insistent. They're not open to negotiation. The captain has just one option. Tell them not to set off the bomb and head for Australia. What does he do? He takes advantage of Africa's unique geography there to point the nose, the plane, not toward the east to cross the Indian Ocean, knowing that it could never make it across. If he had tried to do it that way, if he had tried to go across the ocean, he would have disappeared. Just like Malaysia Airlines, 370 disappeared later, it just vanished. They never found any trace of that plane, so he's going to point the nose of the plane south. He tells them it's okay, we're heading to Australia. He informs the control tower. The controller is completely panicked. He tells him, but be careful, I have the flight plan right in front of me. You don't have enough fuel, you'll never make it to Australia. But the captain says, listen, we don't have a choice. They're here. They're threatening us. It's not like they're giving us the chance to negotiate or anything. The situation gets worse when the pirates attack the carts where the duty-free is. They start opening bottles of whiskey and gulping them down one after another. Even before the whiskey, they were obviously under the influence of drugs, and even before the drugs, they weren't very bright people. So, layer after layer of substances, they were gradually starting to become uncontrollable. In the cabin, some passengers wanted to intervene. In fact, at one point, even using the public address system, the captain explicitly asked the passengers to intervene. Some stood up, unfastened their seatbelts, and wanted, together with the others, to come and help them, to go toward the cockpit and take control from those hijackers. They soon realized there weren't 11 of them, as they first claimed, but only 3, and that they weren't forces of nature, and in terms of weapons, they only had improvised bottles. But the passengers couldn't reach a consensus on this point. Some were saying, no, listen, stop, you're going to put us in danger, you're going to get us all killed, they have a bomb, they told you they have a bomb, so leave them alone. The captain will handle them, they know what they want, and anyway, sooner or later they're going to let us go. Stop putting us in danger. And so the few passengers who wanted to react were stopped by the others and had to return to their seats. There at the level of the situation as it is. Even back when hijackings were common, there were still rules. They weren't written down, but there were well-established rules for hijacking. Hijacking means threat, and threat means weapon. In this specific case, they said they had a bomb. At the very least, they should have verified, communicated, asked, and made sure they could handle it and were serious, rather than just taking their word for it. To show the bomb. Yet no one thought of doing it. The captain could have done it just like FedEx pilots did on another occasion when they were attacked. This time, it wasn't a hijacker, but a colleague who attacked them with a shotgun. They managed to bring him down and later control him by maneuvering the plane with extreme force. He could have done that. The captain, seeing that the 3 hijackers were standing behind him, could have made maneuvers to make them fall, because they're standing, particularly in a hybrid state, and afterwards hoping that some form of control would have been regained over the situation. But nothing like that was done. The plane continues to fly, and very regularly this captain pleads. He nearly begs the hijackers, saying, let us land, we're all going to die, you'll kill us. But they won't listen. We want to visit Australia someday. What had to happen did. An alarm will sound. Go off in the cockpit. Fuel pressure drop. That means there's not much left. He has a watch. He warns the hijackers, the engines will stop. He says, no, don't trust yourself. You're lying and trying to trick us. We're headed to Australia. He tells them, let me land the plane. We still have a chance to land elsewhere. And then afterwards, we refuel, we take on fuel, we leave. But for now, let us land. They refused. A little later, suddenly, one of the engines is going to stop. Another one on the shaft. And then the plane starts to lose altitude. Quite simply, it was at flight level 390. You need a lot of power to maintain that altitude. Suddenly deprived of half its thrust, the plane can't stay at that level. So what does it start to do? It starts to lose altitude. At that point, the hijackers, especially the one who seems to be the leader of the group, who had been in the cockpit for quite a while, start to familiarize themselves with the cockpit instruments. And he realized that the plane was losing altitude. He saw the altimeter gradually going down, and he said to the captain, the altimeter is not showing 39 anymore and it's going down. He said, yes, it's going down. He asked, why are you lowering the altitude? I'm not lowering the altitude. That's just how it is. The plane is falling and I'm not in control. He looks at the captain sternly, pointing his finger at him. He says to him, if the altimeter reaches 20, so if it goes up to level 20, 0, if it gets to 20, I'll kill you. Figure out a way to stay above 20. The captain glanced over at his instrument panel. The variometer showed a descent rate of 3,000 feet per minute. The plane had just passed below flight level 300. His eyes met those of the hijacker. He read that this guy was a congenital idiot on drugs, drunk, determined, and that in exactly 3 minutes he was going to carry out his sinister threat. A little later then, level 200 has been reached, and the pirates' rage reached its peak. One of them jumped onto the flight controls of the 767 the captain was fighting with him, and the pirates started yanking the controls in all directions. To the left, to the right, the plane was rocking its wings, and then it kept losing altitude. At one point, there was a 50-degree bank to one side, and then 50 degrees to the other. The passengers were screaming, and they found new courage. At that point, some people started unbuckling their seatbelts, saying, "Enough is enough. Now we have to go to the cockpit and deal with those hijackers." Others were saying, no, please, it's calm down, stop. At that moment, the second engine gave out. It was no longer possible to reach an airport. This flight was going to end in a crash. It was a mathematical certainty. We were not far from the Comoros. The captain had never visited the Comoros in his life. He didn't even know they existed. It's just that by chance the plane wasn't very far from these islands, and the captain started to see them on the horizon. Given the remaining altitude, he thought he had a chance to reach a beach. So he's going to aim for the beach while fighting with the pirates, who until then thought they were bluffing. That they were telling him, "You want to kill us? You're going to kill us all." But he told them, "No, I'm a dead man. It's over for me. It's over. You killed us. It's finished. I don't think you and I are going to get out of this alive. It's over now." But they kept accusing him. So the plane started flying lower and lower. The flight attendants, realizing we were heading for a water landing, asked the passengers to put on their life jackets. So they said, "Put on your life jackets, but above all, please do not inflate them." However, many passengers, as soon as they put on their jackets, inflated them. Swimming with an inflated life jacket is tough, especially when you need to go under something or underwater. It's impossible even slightly due to the strong positive buoyancy of the life jacket. The plane is now a few hundred feet away. The water landing is imminent. Some passengers stand up, unfasten their seatbelts. This time there are many of them. It's not possible. They see through the windows that the ocean water is completely filling the windows. They understand that this time they can't wait any longer. They have to go do something. So they all unbuckle their seatbelts at once. They stand up, and that's when the plane hits the water. There's the beach. We are in front of a hotel called Galawa, which is the only tourist hotel located in the Comoros. It was built with the help of South Africa. And there we have a couple who are just filming the beach and everything. And then suddenly this plane is going to appear in the video. They weren't the ones filming it. It's the plane that suddenly appears. The plane shows up. It's tilted a bit to the left. And that's very, very suspicious. Because one of the most important factors for a water landing is that the wings are absolutely level. If the wings are tilted, that's really bad. Here, the aircraft is really showing a strong tilt to the left, and that's how it's going to touch down. Engine 1 hits first, then the wingtip as the fast-moving plane approaches. At that moment, we're talking about roughly 200 knots. That's quite an excessive speed. It's going to suddenly and very violently pivot. That means it's going to do a half turn on itself, and on top of that, flip over. We'll make 2 half turns on 2 axes, one on the vertical axis, then another on the horizontal. The plane ends up upside down in the water. The water at this spot isn't very deep. We're talking only about 2 or 3 meters, even just 1 meter in some places. It's just a beautiful paradise-like or very touristy beach, specifically chosen because the depth isn't very great. Those who weren't strapped in were thrown out. For them, it was over. Settled right away. Given the accelerations involved, they were thrown at such speeds that they were killed instantly on impact. For the others, they managed to unbuckle themselves from their seats, but this time they found themselves in an upside-down plane. The seat back is angled downward. There's a very small part that's not underwater yet, but they can feel the plane filling up rapidly. And to get out, what you have to do is swim. You have to swim. And then, at some point, you have to put your head underwater for a short distance, but still, you have to put your head underwater. And there, they can't do it because they have their life jackets. The tourists, the divers immediately rush into the water. Boats, Zodiacs are launched into the sea to try to save as many people as possible. In the end, the toll for the day is still quite heavy. Of the 175 people aboard the Ethiopia 1961, 125 will lose their lives. In this video, we see a brutal ditching, 125,000 lives lost, only 50 saved. There are the 3 hijackers who will all die. The hijackers are among the dead. They were in the cockpit during the impact and weren't lucky, taking the full force of the instruments. The co-pilot and the captain are the ones. Both of them could have survived and even had a long career afterwards until their retirement. It's Ethiopian. The investigation was not conducted by the Comoros. It was conducted by the Ethiopia, just because the Comoros said they lacked the resources for this. You enter our country and crash a plane? Alright, International Civil Aviation Organization says the country where the incident happened usually leads the investigation. And all of that with the collaboration of the others. But in this specific case, they didn't have the resources, so they gave Ethiopia full authority to conduct the investigation. The hackers, we were never really able to understand who they were 3 years ago, who were circulating. But they don't belong to any party. They're not known for being in opposition or politics or belonging to any groups. So they're just young people. They've been described as nihilists. At times, there was no ideal behind their actions. They wanted to go to Australia, and then, once they saw that Australia wasn't possible, they told themselves, still in a nihilistic mindset, they wanted to crash the plane, and so that's what they ended up doing. Afterwards, the Comoros had great difficulty dealing with this tragedy because they don't have the resources. The local hospital couldn't handle all the injured, and especially couldn't handle all the dead. 125 for a death that could have taken 2 or 3 people at most. They ended up placing refrigerated trucks all over the place and then filling them with people. It was the only way to proceed. That hotel where the crash happened, was closed in 2002. In 2002, he had a project to build another hotel with an Emirati group. So what they did was, they closed the hotel, they demolished it, and after that, it was the only tourist hotel in the country, and after the project with the Emirati group, it didn't happen. So there you have it. They ended up with nothing at all. Empty-handed, as we say in Africa. This won't be the last tragedy to strike the Comoros. There will be another one, and we'll talk about it another time. Thank you. There will be another one, and we'll talk about it another time. Thank you.